So the lungs have got a pretty close connection to the heart and blood vessels. They're both pretty closely interlinked. And the heart, of course, with its double circulation, which will send blood round to the lungs, then blood around the body, to the lungs, the body, with the heart in the middle. Okay, so the blood is going through the heart twice. So I'm not going to talk too much about the structure of the lungs. I'm going to mention, though, the way that you breathe in and out. So if I draw the lungs a little bit like this, okay, so imagine that is your windpipe. Make it a little bit thicker. There we go. And these are the two lungs. In fact, your left lung is slightly smaller because the heart would kind of sit about there over the top of it, and it takes up some of the space. So your left lung is generally a bit small. Anyway, you have underneath here a sheet of muscle called the diaphragm. And the key to this, the way that you ventilate your lungs, in other words, bring air in and out, two things are going to happen. Number one, the diaphragm is going to move downwards, and to do that it contracts. Okay, so imagine the diaphragm being a kind of flat sheet, and it's going to pull. So when it contracts and pulls, it goes flat. All right. Now the other thing that will happen is your ribs will move upwards and outwards, and that's also done by muscles called intercostal muscles. In fact, you've got two sets of intercostals, one on the outside, one on the inside, and it's these outside ones that contract in this case. Anyway, the upshot is, if I kind of draw this now, and I'm going to exaggerate it a little bit, because the outside has moved upwards and outwards, and the diaphragm has moved down, I've made my lungs larger. Okay, really what I've done is I've increased their volume. Now, if I increase the volume in here, and there's air in here, in all the alveoli and things, if you increase the volume of something, you decrease the pressure. Okay, if you increase the volume in your lungs, you decrease the pressure that's in there. And what happens is the air on the outside comes rushing in to try and equalise that pressure, to match the pressure up. So when the diaphragm contracts and moves down, the ribs move upwards and outwards, air is, I suppose you'd call it pulled in. It's actually getting forced in from the higher air pressure on the outside. Okay, so an increased volume, decreased pressure, and air comes in. Breathing out is the opposite, so everything's going to relax. So the diaphragm will relax and it'll go back up, and the intercostal muscle on the outside relax, and everything goes back. Now it's easy to do. If you're in an exam and you can't remember, just breathe in. You'll feel it. You know, you can breathe in as hard as you can. You can almost feel those muscles contracting. Okay, so just remember the contraction is about breathing in, and then when you breathe out, it's a relaxation. Now, if you're exercising and you need to breathe out more heavily to get rid of more carbon dioxide, then those interior intercostal muscles will also start contracting. It'll force air out more. But normally, under normal circumstances, this is just about contraction of the diaphragm and contracting of the intercostal muscles to breathe in, and then everything relaxes to breathe out, in and out, and it works on the basis of pressure. Now, the bit that does tend to cause problems, let's see, let's use orange one up. These alveoli, and you know, in reality they kind of tend to look like a little bunch of grapes, I suppose, where each of these little roundy bits is one of the alveoli, or an alveolus, sorry, is a singular. Alveolus, alveoli is the plural. So we're taking just one of these. There we go. All right. Now, again, this is something that is common to anything that's going to absorb. So, for example, your intestines, which will absorb food, have a similar idea. Leaves, which are going to absorb, they're going to absorb light, but they're also going to absorb gases. Similar idea. There are a few things that keep coming up again and again and again if you're going to absorb things. Number one, you want things to be thin. You also want things to be have a good transport system, which in the case of your alveoli is going to be blood vessels. In the case of a leaf, it would be your xylem and phloem. Okay, and there's some, we also want to have, sorry, got the last one, a large surface area, and we achieve that by having lots and lots of them. So thin could transport large surface area. How does it apply to an alveoli? Well, let's put some bits in. They've got a really good blood supply that's very, very close to them, so this would be blood moving through. Okay, so this would be all red blood cells, of course. Okay, the distance across is very, very thin. It's a small distance, so things can easily diffuse, oxygen can easily diffuse into the blood. Let's put some oxygen on there. As it happens, coming back this way, the blood would be high in carbon dioxide, and it can easily diffuse out. So both these cases are diffusion. We're going from high concentration of carbon dioxide in the blood to a lower concentration in the alveoli. This is all air in here. And oxygen is a high concentration in the alveoli. The blood at this time is low oxygen concentration, so it diffuses across. And then that's getting carried away, so it's constantly maintaining what we could call a concentration gradient. And with diffusion, diffusion goes from a high to a low concentration. We're constantly maintaining that gradient because we're constantly taking the stuff away. Nice thin distance, so not very much for it to pass through. Good transport, loads of blood vessels, large surface area because we've got plenty of these alveoli, and that's the key to the lungs.